Hello guys, my name is SVB and I'm back with another video. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different and I hope you guys will find it helpful. I'm going to do my first map guide and I decided to start with Blizzard World because I know that's something that quite a lot of people have told me they find tricky. They don't really know how to play this map. So I'm going to run you through all of Blizzard World, point A, B and C. I'm going to show you the best places to defend, the best ways to attack, hero picks, what's optimal, what's not, and a whole bunch of stuff. So without any more chitter chatter, let's get right into it. So I'm going to start off with defense and I'll run through the entire map on defense, where you should be holding, things like that, and then I'll run through the opposite side, go through the attack, how to break down some of the defenses that you'll see on Blizzard World. So point A is quite big, but it also has a lot of cover, so it leads to some interesting scenarios. Now a lot of people like to hold up here, and I personally wouldn't really recommend that, and I'll tell you why. The reason you hold up here is if you have a specific shield comp, and most people when they're playing Blizzard World tend to go with Ryan Zarya. That's what I've seen as the most common, dominant way of defending, and that's probably the best. However, if you can play a Orisa, Roadhog, and a Junkrat, these are the type of heroes that thrive on this setup, because when the enemy comes in, they're coming in through two fairly narrow avenues. So standing up here allows you to spam those avenues, spam those choke points, and get a lot of mileage for your spam characters. Now the reason I would say that you don't hold there, because that does sound great, the reason is that once the attackers start to move through, they're running in through these side lanes, or maybe they've gone all the way inside, then if you're set up here, it becomes very hard for you to jump back on point in a coordinated manner. You'll see a lot of pros hold up on this point, because obviously the pros, when they're running that specific comp, they have the coordination to get back into position in time. But in solo queue, I would suggest that you're not really going to have the coordination. You know, one or two people are going to jump down and the others are going to still be up top firing and spamming, trying to get a kill. Or, you know, one person will drop this way, another person will go all the way inside, another person will go this way. So that's why I would recommend in solo queue you hold a different place, and I'll show you that now. So the better place to hold is actually here, closer to point. So one way is to hold here and set up again another shield comp, preferably with an Orisa, because she can actually shoot from here. Reinhardt would just have to stand still and hold his shield. So you could stand up here with an Orisa, or you stand down there with a Reinhardt and Zarya, and that's what you'll see. That's what I've seen, at least in my games most often, is a Rein shield out here, and then he just pokes in and out from this angle when he wants to recharge his shield, with Zarya behind him. And just everybody is either set up on the high ground, the rest of the team is either set up on the high ground, or they're just fighting around on the point. Now personally, if you ask me which setup I think is better, personally I prefer the Ryan Zarya comp, just because in solo queue, like I said, it's quite difficult to coordinate moving around. But if you do want to run an Orisa shield, or maybe maybe you're in a scrim, so you have the coordination to move around. If you do want to run the Orisa, or you just want to run a comp from up here, then the key to sticking up here is that you have to have a mobile character who's going to contest point. Because when the enemy comes, this is the point about here. Because when the enemy team comes in, they're going to start touching point, and if you're all up top here, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because they're going to start accumulating the percentage. And then people usually panic when that tick starts coming in, and when you can hear the sound of these checkpoints being cleared. That's when people panic. That's when people jump without warning, and that's when you get pressured to jump down when you're not really ready. So if you're going to hold up here, like this, I suggest you have maybe a D.Va. D.Va's ideal to run with the Orisa here, because she can just fly around the edges, just poke from side to side, come back up when she needs healing, and then drop back down when she's ready with her defense matrix. So someone like D.Va, but alternatively, if you have a different hero who's mobile, maybe if you're running a Genji or a Tracer, that's another option to just jump in and out of the point. Make sure that just one person is contesting the point. A common mistake that people make is that they'll often have like a really shield heavy setup, a setup that is quite fat and is hard to dislodge. They'll play this setup, but the minute someone runs on the point, they'll panic and drop down, and that ruins the entire point of having an Orisa, for example, because if she's in range of being hit by a Reinhardt on the enemy team, then there's no point playing Orisa. You may as well just play Reinhardt. So there's really only need to have one person on point, because if the rest of you can set up in this shield area, spamming down damage from all these angles, even maybe someone poking there. Then you're playing the comp optimally, because you're getting that damage, you're getting that pressure, and you're not letting them get any ticks as well. So if you're going to run a Orisa, stick up here, keep a mobile character to touch the point, and if you do have to touch, make sure it's around this corner, because the point will be like this. So make sure you drop your shield in this sort of corner, and then you just poke around back and forth. Just because if you stand right in the middle and just plop your shield down there, first of all, it's not a great shield because they can fire all around it. But secondly, you're in the middle of the point and you're exposed. If you drop your shield in this corner here, then you can always hide behind natural cover. And remember, guys, in my tank videos I talked about natural cover and the importance of using that alongside your shield. So if you do drop down to this corner here, or the other corner on the other side, or even you can try and sit up here depending on what the situation is. Play it by ear, but like I said, that's how you would play the Orisa defense. Now if you're playing Reinhardt, you're not really going to mess around with all that nonsense. You're just going to put your shield here, jiggle back and forth when the enemy come in. If they start pushing in here, you can sort of hide in this area, or you can drop all the way back to the corner that I just pointed out. Now if you were to ask me which one I prefer, I would probably say I prefer the Reinhardt Zarya setup on this area, purely because, like I said, if you're solo queuing, it's so much easier to play with this setup. The Orisa setup requires a lot of call-outs, a lot of coordination, and if you're playing with random people you don't know, I can almost guarantee someone is going to jump out of position. Just peek around the edges, and if the enemy team's barrier starts to go down, then you can pressure them, you can move forward, and your DPS can always poke from the side. And also your healers can sit far back. Your healers can sit in sort of this area, or behind this market stall here, which is good cover. And an Ana, for example, can just shoot this sight line, or this sight line, and the same goes for Zen. So that's a nice area to hold. And obviously you got to bear in mind that you have to be ready to rotate should the enemy come this way, because they'll have free access to your support. So you have to be quick to rotate, quick to recognize if they're going the other way. In terms of DPS, Widowmaker actually works pretty well, because this is a really long sight line here. So a Widowmaker is quite a good pick on this map, and really anybody who has good ability to exploit long distance is a good pick. So another Soldier, McCree, these kind of picks, they work well. You can run a dive comp and then run a Genji Tracer, but the issue with running a dive comp is that, again, it requires a lot of coordination, and even more so than the Orisa one, because this map, like I said, this point A is a lot of space. So if two of the enemy team are here and you dive down on them with your Winston and your Diva, there's a very real chance that a couple of them will just go down this way, and it's very easy for their team to get scattered on this point. So again, you can play a dive defense, and in that case just play your standard dive comp, Winston, Diva, Genji Tracer, and just try and sort of be elusive, keep your healers around here, around cover, and just coordinate your dives. But that's quite tough usually. Junkrat again is actually a hero who does work well, and you'll see often the pros, like I said, sit up with the Junkrat on that far top there with Orisa, because he can spam the chokeways and he can fire from behind cover even here. So Junkrat is another good pick. His scan are good because quite often you will see a Pharah, so you might need to shoot her down. Okay, so your defense on point A failed. What do you do now? So point B, unlike point A, is very vertically based, and it has even longer sidelines than point A. So like I said, guys, most maps with a payload have a point B that involves a lot of verticality. So that's something you really will have to address, both on attack and defense. Now on defense, the actual best place to hold is right here. And the reason for that is this is the hardest choke point to get out of on point B. So if you can hold the enemy team here, you'll do great. If you guys wiped too early and you all got good spawn, and you all got the spawn right around just a little bit off picture there, and you can get here in time with all 6 of you, this is the best place to hold, and I'll just show you exactly why. So if you hold here, there's only 3 places the enemy can come from. Here, here, and this around the corner, and here. Now the advantage of holding here is that you can see them coming from all those directions quite easily, and they'll still have to come out of what is eventually going to be a choke. So you're quite covered if the payload is right here. So you're quite covered if the payload is just around here. If the payload is settled here, then the enemy has to come on it to move it. That means that you can hold him as this choke point. So if you can get a Ryan shield and just put it around this corner again, peek around this edge, then that's the absolute perfect place to hold. You can even use the payload for cover as well, just hide up behind it. And again, you force the enemy into a very tight corridor. So this is the optimal place to hold the payload, guys. If you can gather, try and hold the payload here. Now, suppose you weren't able to spawn together, you got split spawn and you couldn't gather up to this choke in time, then the payload is going to start moving quite a bit. And there's not really too many amazing places to hold in this early stretch. Any of these places are very, very exposed to flankers. So you can have people coming from here, you can have people coming from there, you can have people coming from inside the room over there. So if you're trying to hold here, you have a lot of harass potential to deal with. So this really isn't, this whole stretch is really not a great place to hold. If you can group and if you can wait, this area is much, much nicer to hold. Because as you can see already, there's sort of natural cover on top of the bridge, and then there's these covers inside the rooms on either side. So any squishy characters who are under danger can always hide in here, they can always peek around the corners. And if you're a Reinhardt and you've got your shield here, or if you're in Orisa, then you'll do a great job of just sort of zoning the enemy into a tight, narrow corridor, which can be flanked, but not as easily as those open areas out there. So this is a much better place to hold. Holding something like up here is potential as well, but again, you're going to have that mobile character touching payload. And it can be quite risky when the payload, as opposed to the 2CP point, which is stationary, the payload will move the minute someone goes off it. So it is a little bit risky to set up your shop up top here, because if your diva, for example, who's contesting has to fly up for a little bit, that payload might move under the bridge and then you're trapped up here. So you can hold here, but just be confident that you can keep touching and keep contesting the payload. Now if you're running a dive comp, quite a lot of that doesn't really matter, because all this distance can be covered quite quickly with a Winston jump, with a diva jump, with a Genji dash, Tracer blinks. So dive comp works really well here, as it does on almost all second points on payload maps. So with a dive comp, you can pretty much take the fight most places without fear, as long as you're making sure your support's not getting dove on. And the advantage of dive on second point is obviously that you address the verticality of the map. If the enemy does come on top, you can contest them on top. If they're down, you can contest them down. Now the place where you'll see most defenders hold is actually here, because this is where spawn is, and you'll quite often see the fights that are taking place in this area, quite often around these sides as well. Again, this is great for a defender because you have spawn advantage. So if you can just keep one person touching the payload, you'll be good. Just be aware of the flank routes. Keep an eye out of someone coming on top. But generally, this is a very nice place to hold. Now let's assume that unfortunately you couldn't hold it on point B either, and you've been forced into point C. The payload's going to move this way. Now point C, again, like most payload maps, completely changes to point B. There's much less verticality. And the biggest issue becomes the tight, narrow chokeways. So let's just get into what works there. So if you've been forced onto point C, again, you can see the payload path here. The payload has to come through quite a narrow alleyway, as it were. And again, there's only really 2 or 3 locations where the enemy can come from. There's another door on the right-hand side. So those are only the 3 locations that you can encounter enemies from. And as long as you keep your eyes open, you should be able to see where they're coming from pretty much every time. Again, if you got a good spawn and you're all together, this is the ideal place to hold. This corner here, you keep your Reinhardt, your Orisa on this side here, and you just peek back and forth, and you stop the payload moving. And the advantage of this is this entire length is basically covered by Reinhardt shield, so it's ideal for Reinhardt. I would really recommend you switch to Reinhardt at this point. It's also very easy for the supporting Zarya behind him to get a lot of charge. Now DPS picks are really flexible on this point actually, because you quite often see someone like a Widowmaker harassing from this angle, because this is again a great sideline. And there's also a little sideline coming from this angle. I'll just show you now. There's also a great sideline for Widow here where she can peek from this angle. So you can see a Widowmaker legitimately played on this point. And at the same time, you can also see Tracers who can come around the flank, come around the sides, harass the backline. Junkrat is great because again it's a very narrow area. Hanzo really thrives because obviously if you're going to run a Ryan Zarya, then the Hanzo Dragon combo is always really strong. Pretty much on point C, you can get away with running most DPS as long as you just try and make sure that it complements what the rest of your team is doing. And like I said, when you're defending, bear in mind that the enemy might come from here or here as well as coming from here. So just keep an eye open. Your supports are probably going to be around in the back here, behind the pillar, or it might be out here. And if somebody does sneak in from either of these two locations, it's going to be very, very easy for them to get to your support. So keep an eye out. Be ready to peel for your team. And if your supports have to, then duck into this room with the health pack. That's a nicer place to hide. And if you've been pushed around this back area here, you're basically in one fight territory. If you lose one fight, you lose this round. But thankfully you do have spawn advantage. So again, just try and play the natural cover, peek around these sides here. You can also send a couple people around here and just be careful of someone coming from here. Make sure you pay attention to this flank as well, although it's not something people use very often. But still, just keep an eye out here. But as long as you're holding here, you've got good places for your supports and your DPS to shoot down from. Lots of cover. So this is again a really good place to hold if you can. I wouldn't super recommend dive on this last point because it is quite narrow. There are ceilings, and there's a good chance that if you are playing characters who jump, their jump isn't going to realize its full potential. It won't reach the maximum distance. A Winston trying to jump from here to here is almost definitely going to hit the ceiling, and then he's going to be stuck without a jump. And same for like Genji dashes and things like that. So again, I would recommend sticking to the Ryan Zarya on this point, just because of the narrow pathways. Now moving on to the attack phase, we should have a lot more room to talk about things in detail now. So what's good for point A attack on Blizzard World? Well, again, it is quite a good map for most characters. In terms of your tanks, it's going to be difficult to run a resale on attack, as it is in most non-payload points, obviously because their shield is static. So if you're running a Reinhardt as your main tank or a Winston as your main tank, both are equally viable, I would say, but obviously they require different approaches. So let's see what those are. So if you're running a Reinhardt, obviously you want to be running complementary heroes, so Zarya. In terms of healers are mostly flexible on most maps, but something like a Ana, Zen, Lucio, Mercy obviously as well. To be honest, any of them you can run viably behind a Reinhardt. But if you're running a Reinhardt, then you want complementary DPS. So try and pick people who can do a lot of pressure to the enemy Reinhardt shield. Hanzo's, soldiers, Doomfist, Sombra who can flank and cause a lot of nuisance. These heroes do really well on this map. And obviously you can also play Brigitte. Goats is also very popular on Blizzard World, and both on attack and defense it is a very viable strategy. Whatever comp you're running, you're going to be coming from either this route here or this route here. Now if you're running a Reinhardt comp, or if you're running even a Goats comp, then it's probably better to come from this room in here. Let me just show you guys how it starts. So you go through that left side of spawn, you come in through here, and the advantage of going through here is that you avoid any poke damage that the enemy might give you, because the first time they'll see you is here. If they're set up on the top like I mentioned, they will probably be able to spam you quite hard, but provided you keep your shield up as Reinhardt, you can quite quickly just move around this corner, shield up, shield up, shield up, and bam, you're out of their sightlines. Now they've got a problem because, like I said, if they're set up top, they're going to have to move down very, very quickly. And if they're rushing to drop down to point, that's when you can exploit them. You run right into them, and as they're coming in one by one, you can suddenly change the positioning that you'll have control of the point, and they'll be forced to attack you. Quite often when you're defending a control point, you will have the team that's attacking and the team that's defending switch roles. And what I mean by that is, to start with, by default, the defending team will have control of the point. Obviously you spawn all the way here as an attacker, so it's your job to come in and try and wrestle control of the point off the enemy team. But say the defenders are set up on top here, and as the attackers you manage to touch point first. All of a sudden, if 6 of you are on this point and the enemy has to come in one by one, they become the attackers, as it were. You're defending the point now. You're just trying to stop them from getting on point. So you will reverse the roles if you can come on to point and the enemy team is up here. So that's the way of punishing any sort of spam comp set up here. If you are facing an Orisa, Roadhog or Junkrat, the best bet to counter that is to run a Lucio. And by running a Lucio, you can just sort of speed your team through this choke with the Reinhardt shield up. And even if no matter how much they're spamming it, they won't be able to break it so quickly that by the time with the Lucio speed that you get around here, you can be up here in no time. Now, you do have one other option, which is to go through this room here. But personally, I'm not a big fan. If you're facing a setup here, this room is really not the best place to go, and I'll tell you why. As you move through this room, it seems like another route, but really it's just another choke point. And if the enemy team is smart, all they'll do is adjust their position to either set up here and spam you this way, or come all the way around here and then spam you this way. So it's not really ideal, and also the time it takes you to travel through the tunnel, the enemy team can just drop back on the point, and you allow them far more time than if you'd gone the other way and just sped on the point. So this is another option, but personally that's not really one I would recommend. Now the benefit of going into this room is if the enemy team isn't set up here, you do get to go through here and have quite a few options. So say the enemy team is set up far back on point. They're over here, or they're over here, or they're over here. So say they're over there. You, by going through this room, you make yourself a couple options. So you can easily jump up top from here, or there's another room down here where you come through the stairs, or you go for the really, really long flank, which is to drop down here and then go around this side. Now, if you can execute this without really being seen, or if the enemy team is not really well coordinated, you will get free access to their back line. Because all of a sudden you can come in here, you can attack them, if they're set up on top, you can attack them here. You'll probably find some squishy healers out here. So if you can get all the way around there without being seen, or if you can move fast, or if the enemy team is just dumb and don't react to you, then you can get a free hit on their defenders, on their back line. So that's something to bear in mind if your couple attacks up front aren't really working. And also as a DPS player, this is a great flank that you can take to get around. Unless you're Sombra and you can just invis around, or you're Pharah and you're flying around here. Now speaking of Pharah, this is a very good map for Pharah, or at least a very good point for Pharah, because there's a huge distance from where you can fire, and you can exploit the fact that Pharah has no fall off damage. So you can just be laying rockets down from all sorts of distances, spamming it onto the point while your team starts contesting. And anytime you hit someone, if you call out that you've hit them, it should be very easy for your team to exploit. Bear in mind, like I said, this is also a map that Widowmakers like to play, so you may have a tough time on that matchup depending on how well you play it. But Pharah is very, very viable on attack, and if you run Pharah, ideally you want to run a dive comp with her. So while dive comp isn't great on defense here, it is great on attack. And the way you'd work a dive comp in this scenario, that you get your team up to this natural cover, you get them to either of these areas, and even if the enemy team is set up here, or if they're set up around the corner, you leave yourself within touching distance. So one Winston dive can go up top here, or just easily walk around the corner and touch here, and then you have the option to dive the back line should you want to. But one Winston jump, a Diva jump, Genji dash, Tracer blink, all these things can touch the enemy very, very quickly at a dive comp. So if you can get your team to this point without taking loads of poke damage, or if you can all get to this point, heal up, you have time to prepare, you have time to dive. Now if you're running a Reinhardt v Reinhardt and the enemy team is up here, and you do manage to get your team up to here, one of the things that you'll often see is a bit of a stalemate. And I'm just going to give you guys a little trick that I've used a lot in my comp games, and I would say it works about 90% of the time. So if you want to break down a stubborn Reinhardt defense on point A of Blizzard World, the best trick that I know, and one that, like I said, works really often for me, is what you should do is fake going left and then go right. So the way you do this is you come up like normal. Most teams come up like this, and then they just start fighting mindlessly. So defenders are sort of conditioned to expect you to go down this way. Almost everybody goes down this way, and almost all the fights take down in this area. So if you can start moving to this direction with your team, you'll trigger that conditioned response at the enemy team that, oh, they're coming from this direction, everybody face this way, everybody adjust your positioning to get this way. So you just come around, say this far, you show them that you're here, you're like, oh yeah, here I am. You poke a little bit, and they think, okay, they're just poking, no danger here, no issue. You come back around to cover, the enemy team is probably thinking, well, they're just recovering, they're just healing up. That's when you go around this way, and you will almost always catch them by surprise. Almost always the enemy team supports will be sat up here, and if you can rush through here, if you have a Lucio particularly, Lucio is very, very helpful on point A. But even without a Lucio, and particularly you have something like a dive comp, you can get to this backline so easily. And even if you get 1 or 2 kills here, that's enough to win the team fight, provided you guys don't do any stupid stuff. Once you've gotten control and you got the payload moving, it's mostly smooth sailing most of the time in point B. Like I said, this is one place where defenders can hold up really well, and this can be very hard to break down. So if you're an attacker and you're stuck here, you have to get a little bit creative. Unless you pull off some sort of ult combo. Ult combos are a great way to break down a stubborn defense. So let's say you are running a Reinhardt, you really kind of want to be landing a big shatter while the enemy team is all in this straight line here. And again, if you can have another teammate help you, a Brigitte bash, maybe a Pharah booping the Reinhardt, a Lucio booping the Reinhardt, anything like that can use to distract the Reinhardt, a Doomfist uppercut. All these things can be used to try and land a big ult combo. Another obviously old classic is the Diva Bomb over the top. And the way this works is you send the Diva Bomb either in the air over the top, or you can just throw it along the ground. And if there's an enemy Reinhardt, they're almost certainly going to have to turn around. And that's when you, as the friendly Reinhardt, launch your shatter. With the enemy Rein turn around, it should be an easy 4, 5, 6 man shatter. So that's one combo. The other combo is obviously anything to create space for something like a Genji blade. Again, a Diva Bomb works really effectively here. A Winston Primal Rage to jump in and start causing havoc is another great one. So just get a little bit creative. You can try coming around these side avenues, but like I said, the problem with these are that they are also choke points. If the enemy reacts quickly enough, they can get to you. But if you can come around here, then you can give yourself a lot of space. It's a very long flank, so you are committing a lot of time to this. But once you get up onto this high ground, you basically have completely switched the enemy team around. You should have all the sight lines on them, all the avenues to attack them from. And if you do invest in the time to take this long route, you will have a much better angle to fight the enemy team from. Now, if the enemy team is holed up anywhere along this path, then the best way to attack them really is to exploit the verticality. Let's say your Reinhardt push hasn't been working. You haven't been able to land any big combos, no shatters, no tack visors, no dragons, no grabs. Nothing's working for you. The best vanilla attack on point B is definitely with a Winston Diva dive. And the reason for that is, again, so much high ground for you to sit up on top of, position yourself, and then you can dive the back line very easily, because they will be usually sat somewhere around there or on the far side next to spawn. So loads of space for Diva and Winston to exploit. And there's also great sidelines for a Widowmaker. You guys might remember Pine set up on this tank in Overwatch League, just raining death down. There's loads of great sightlines for Widow. Anywhere up top here gives you great free access to the enemy backline. So Widowmaker is a great pick here. And again, any flanking heroes, Genji, Tracer, Sombra, Doomfist, all these guys have a lot of room to work from, a lot of avenues to come around. So if you're playing one of these heroes, try and exploit any of these multiple angles. Try and catch the enemy backline off guard, and if you can pick one and ideally 2 of them off, that's it. You should win the fight from there. Now, one thing to note as an attacker, if you do push the cart all the way to point B, this is one of the most frequent points where you will get staggered respawns. And what I mean by that is, let's say you killed the enemy Ana and the enemy Zenyatta quite early in the fight, and then slowly the rest of the tanks and the DPS went down. There's a very good chance that in this spawn room, the Ana and Zen, or anybody who got killed early in the fight, will have respawned. So if you do take this cart and point B, it takes a little bit of time to get it moving anyways. So this is the perfect time to go inside this building here and look for any stragglers, look for anybody who's got the late spawn, chase them down, try and exploit them, because if you can get those late kills, that's basically going to win you a second team fight without actually having to have a team fight. If you can find a couple supports hanging around here, then you're gonna get loads of free push on the cart. So again, this area is very narrow. It really favors the Reinhardt Zarya combo, and you will quite often see the Reinhardt v Reinhardt take place on this point. On point B, it's much easier to exploit with Winston, but on point C, it's really all about the Reinhardt v Reinhardt. There are a lot of avenues for DPS to exploit around. So if you are playing any of the flanking DPS, you can go all around here, inside the room, come up on top here. These are great angles for someone like a Soldier and a McCree. If you can get up top here, you can really rain some damage down. Same goes for Hanzo, whose wall climb can be quite handy in getting up to these positions. Again, if you want to break down a stubborn defense, you have to get a little bit creative, guys. If you know, even coming through the rooms isn't working, it's all about the ult combos. Or try and get your DPS in, if you can get an invisible Sombra in the back line and start harassing the back, or get a hack off on the Reinhardt from this angle, because it's quite easy to sneak around here. You do have to get a little bit creative with your attacks. Now again, like on point A, Goats is great on this point, and I say this pre-Brig patch. I'm not sure how it'll affect her play. I think she'll probably still be very, very strong. But Goats is definitely very strong because it's very narrow. There's a lot of opportunity for Lucio to speed boost you right into the enemy team, take them by surprise, and force a very brawly fight. If you're not one for a Goats comp, again, like I pointed out, this is a great angle for Widowmaker. She can come around the side, deet, walk up the steps with her high heels, and boom, you got this great sight line on the enemy team. And again, as Widowmaker, the first shot is always key if you're flanking. So if you're flanking, and this applies to quite a few heroes actually, someone like a Hanzo as well. If you can land that first shot, just take your extra couple seconds to make sure you land that first shot. You can get an almost guaranteed pick if you catch them by surprise. And that's basically a huge swing for your team. Once you get the payload to this kind of area, there's really not much subtlety left in how you're going to win. You just have to straight up brawl the enemy team out. There's not a lot of great angles. There's that angle, and then there's this angle, but they're all kind of... This is just one large sideline, and if anybody's watching that area, you're going to get shut down quite easily. So once you get to this point, it's just about brawling it out. Try and keep a good ult economy, keep a lot of ults in hand, and if you can steamroll them to this point, then that would be ideal. Just keep trying to stagger them till you get here, and then just brawl out with your ults and try and win the point. So that's all I got for today, guys. I hope you found this helpful, because this is my first map guide, and if you did, just let me know. Hit the like button, drop a comment below, and I'll know that you guys are enjoying it, so I can make more map guides, more content based like this. And if you have a particular map that you want me to look at next, again, drop a comment, let me know which one you want to see broken down. As always, I'm still accepting VODs for analysis, and I'll drop my Discord in the description of this video below, and it's also in my channel description. So if you have a game you want me to look at, just drop me the VOD, and I'll try and get to it. And hopefully this video should help you guys wreck Blizzard World next time you're playing it in ladder. And I'm going to leave you with a little clip of proof of the fake left go right strat and how effective it is. See you guys next time. Fake left, go right, guys. Fake left and go right. Okay, go right. Quick. Two down. Taking his Zen away. Zen on the right.
Oh, shoulder.
Tracer in the back. No recall. Good job, guys.
They're down 4.